Nolan was mid-sentence. Fire her entire team for that car the moment they finished the new code, when the elevator doors opened and he nearly collided with me. Didn't even flinch. Just brushed past like I was invisible, dragging Trent behind him, who was too busy laughing to notice I'd heard every word. A luxury SUV for the CEO's son in exchange for my team's careers. That was the trade. 11 years of round-the-clock work, of system patches at 3 a.m., of holding this company together with duct tape and willpower, and we were worth exactly one lease agreement and some leather seats. That morning, I stared at my reflection in the hallway glass and felt something settle behind my ribs. Not rage, not grief, something colder, final. You'd think after a decade of loyal service, getting stabbed in the back would feel like a shock. It didn't. It felt like a confirmation. Quick thing before I go further, if you're listening to this and haven't subscribed yet, hit that button and toss a like our way. 97% of folks just scroll on without supporting, but it seriously helps keep this kind of storytelling alive. You're here anyway, might as well make it count. Anyway, Skylance Metrics wasn't flashy. We didn't have those beanbag chair break rooms or kombucha on tap like all the LinkedIn darlings. We were a grinder of a company, stuffed in a forgettable office park in Reston, Virginia. And my division, infrastructure engineering, was the spinal cord. Batch schedulers, ETL pipelines, legacy to modern connectors no one else could untangle. I didn't hire rock stars. I hired survivors, people who could build miracles with bad specs and worse budgets, people who trusted me to fight for them when no one else would. I ran point not because I wanted power, but because someone had to keep the chaos from eating us alive. HR ignored us, finance undercut us, product treated us like support staff, but we made things work. Quietly, precisely. We were the duct tape. Until Nolan Vexley slithered in. The board brought him on as a modernization CTO, which in startup speak meant a walking LinkedIn profile in a $900 hoodie. He didn't know our stack, didn't care. He wanted dashboards, buzzwords, and big wins, preferably ones he could stand in front of. He started scrubbing titles from changelogs, began taking credit for work he didn't understand. Once had the audacity to ask if our ETL cron job could be Dockerized into a single GraphQL endpoint. That sentence alone should have gotten him fired. And then came Trent, the CEO's pride and joy, barely 26, fresh out of a tech MBA that cost more than my mortgage. He wandered through our floor like a tourist, flicking his eyes over screens like he was sizing up cattle. The first time he spoke to me, he asked if we had any intern-level tickets I could crush to build some operational visibility. I said no, he smirked, and walked off like I was a vending machine that ate his dollar. Still, I kept us running, kept our heads down and our commits clean. Until that elevator ride, they thought I wouldn't hear. They thought it didn't matter. But that morning, I did something I hadn't done in 5 years. I opened my private repository. A forked skeleton of our core engine, cleaner, modular, auditable, it wasn't finished. But it was mine. My structure, my methods, my license framework, tied to my own entity. I'd started it on weekends just for the hell of it. Now it had a purpose. Back in the office, I moved quietly, smiled when Nolan barked demands, nodded when Trent joked about getting all this infra stuff automated so we don't need those salary sinks. I documented every change, updated contract headers, rechecked timestamp rules and audit triggers. Every line of the parallel system had clean ownership. Every function had a license header. Nolan didn't read code, he'd never notice. But someone else would, soon. Nolan dropped the bomb at 6:13 p.m., just late enough that no one could protest, just early enough to trap us before we left for the day. Investor demo's been moved up. We need the new engine finalized, tested, and staged for deployment by the 18th. No exceptions. Then he smiled like we should applaud. Trent leaned in the doorway behind him, arms crossed, smug as a man who's never had to open a Jira ticket in his life. Clock's ticking, he added, like this was some Shark Tank episode and not my team's livelihood. No one said a word. You don't argue with people holding the knife. We'd been working on the rebuild for nearly a year. Low priority, low visibility. It wasn't even slated for investor review until Q3. Suddenly, it was critical path. Suddenly, the entire platform needed to be demo-ready in 3 weeks flat. With no change in resourcing, no headcount bump, no budget. Just the same 7 tired engineers staring down a full system rebuild so 2 jackasses could show off a graph during a catered lunch. My gut didn't tighten right away. It curdled. Back at my apartment, I pulled up the repo logs. Last week, Nolan had added a signature line to the staging checklist doc, just a basic lead engineer sign-off required field. Seemed harmless, but combined with his sudden timing push, it smelled like setup. I made coffee. It was nearly 11 p.m. when I opened the architecture sketch of my private build. I hadn't touched it since March. The fork was cleaner than I remembered. No legacy weirdness, no duct tape patches. Just pure modular orchestration, mapped to a license schema I'd written in plain English and filed through my LLC ClearSpan systems. The licensing clause was elegant. Non-derivative private use permitted for affiliated contributors. All external execution under contract, subject to premium rate schedule. In other words, use it internally? Fine. Fire me and try to profit from it? Let's talk fees. I wasn't planning to use it, not yet, but I hardened it anyway. Added new checksum logs, vaulted the keys in a secure bucket, rewrote the audit handler to log every external call. And then, the elevator. I was heading down to grab an energy drink from the lobby fridge. It was past midnight. I thought I was alone. Then I heard the voices before the doors fully opened. "The moment they finish the new engine, just clean sweep 'em," Nolan was saying. "No severance, no rollout phase, just gone." Trent laughed. "Jesus, that's savage, but fair. Think you'll get enough out of it to cover the Escalade?" "That or a Cayenne, I'm not picky." He was. I knew he was. That's the part that stuck with me, the sheer deliberateness of it. They weren't just trimming fat, they were planning a sacrifice. Burn the people, keep the code, buy the car. I didn't speak. I didn't blink. I stepped back as the elevator descended again without them seeing me. When I got back to my desk, I remote accessed the building's security system. Pulled the audio, time-stamped 12:08 a.m., server room elevator channel B. I downloaded the file, saved it 3 times, local, remote, cold drive. Then I opened the internal contract repository, found the staging checklist, and added one line under Nolan's signature box. Delivery confirmation triggers contractual license audit. See Schedule C. I had uploaded Schedule C last week, a legal artifact no one had reviewed. It contained one line, in bold, near the bottom. Early termination of contributors prior to signed consolidation agreement shall revert all work classification to premium consulting rates, not less than $45,000 per developer, per hour, retroactive to project inception. No bells, no whistles, just a clause buried in policy no one ever reads. I clicked save. Then I locked down my fork and waited. The change was 17 words long. No fanfare, no blinking warning boxes or pop-up confirmations. Just a quiet update to an internal doc that hadn't been touched since 2018. Contractual execution schedule, developer license attribution. I added a footnote to section 4.3 and a cross-link to Schedule C, which by now was time-stamped, notarized, and filed through our internal compliance archive. It looked like routine legal housekeeping. Boring, harmless, unreadable. Exactly how I needed it to be. A week passed. Then 10 days. Nolan never noticed. He was too busy practicing his thought leader face in the mirror of the executive break room. One afternoon, I caught him trying to explain our orchestration queue to an investor rep using the phrase real-time generative sync. The rep blinked like someone had just tried to sell him a Bluetooth plunger. Nolan smiled wider, convinced he was killing it. Meanwhile, I kept refining the shadow system. The fork, codename Arcadia, was humming. I'd cleaned up the task scheduler, rebuilt the load balancer config to support tiered failovers, even added a real UI, just in case someone ever gave a damn enough to use it. It was sleek, efficient, mine, and legally distinct, because the deeper truth buried beneath every licensing tag and modular container was this. Skylance's engine was built like Frankenstein's monster, stitched together over years with borrowed limbs and undocumented hacks. Arcadia wasn't. It was born whole. Every module was architected clean from scratch, no copy-paste, no derivation, no ownership confusion, which meant when the time came and they tried to claim it, they'd hit a wall of their own making, and a bill they never saw coming. Nolan had no idea he'd already signed the matchstick. 2 Fridays before the demo, he messaged me a PDF. Just said, "Sign this for delivery milestone 2. Needed for board prep. Thanks." I opened it. Page 3, bottom right. Lead System Engineer Certification, final module delivered per SLA, licensing reviewed, no objections noted. I stared at it, read it twice, then forwarded it back without comment. He signed his half 2 minutes later. Just like that, the clause was active. I looked over at my team that afternoon, Tasha debugging a Python thread leak, Ron manually mapping a data schema no one else would touch, Kieran fixing some grotesque shell script a former intern had once duct taped together. People I'd spent years fighting for, people who trusted me with their livelihoods. And I thought, they were about to get betrayed by a man who couldn't spell YAML, but not this time. The next day, I triggered the final code freeze on the main branch. I added a CI/CD validator to ensure nothing shipped without license reconciliation. Not a single deploy would go live without my sign-off. Quietly, I redirected all build artifacts to a read-only mirror, documented, secure, but untouchable by anyone without a verified SSH key from my machine. By now, Arcadia was version locked and stable. It didn't just match our current engine, it exceeded it. And no one at the top even knew it existed. I started sleeping better, not because I was done, because I was ready. HR called a check-in meeting at 4:22 on a Tuesday, just as Ron was about to leave for his kids' orchestra recital. Nothing urgent, the invite said, just aligning on future staffing projections. I joined the video call muted, camera off, let them monologue their way into their own agenda. It didn't take long. So, the HR rep said, feigning casual like it was a second language. Just wondering, what's your sense of when the final engine module will be submitted? Ballpark is fine. I paused. We're aligning delivery with the previously communicated SLA. You should have access to that. Oh, right, yeah, just confirming. And unrelated, she said, immediately proving that was a lie. Do you anticipate your team staying on after Q1, or are most of them on contract ending at the end of the phase? I said nothing for a beat too long. All current contracts were renewed through July, per Nolan's directive. Silence. Then a cheerful, okay, just getting my spreadsheet in order. Thanks. Nolan was feeding them bad data, or no data, or both. I ended the call and stared at my monitor. My team was 3 doors down, still in the war room we'd claimed for demo prep. There was tension in the way they moved now, not panic, not confusion, just that low, bone-deep hum of people who know they're being watched by something that's smiling too wide. Trent had started making more appearances, walking around with dealership brochures wedged under his laptop like they were extension of his ego. Midnight Gray or Sapphire Ice, he asked once, waving a Cayenne pamphlet like we were coworkers and not future casualties. Can't decide which one screams leadership more? I didn't answer, just made a note. Monday, 3:17 p.m. Break room. Trent bragging about vehicle options. For a man who'd never written a single line of code, he had a lot of opinions on how bloated our dev team was. Meanwhile, Nolan kept pretending everything was on track. He gave the board a pre-demo update that used the phrase flawless backend transition and zero-risk handoff. He didn't mention the licenses, or the real engine, or the fact that legally, the moment he approved delivery and then greenlit any layoffs, he was effectively lighting a bonfire under his own chair. I didn't correct him. I was too busy preparing. At night, I moved Arcadia's latest backups onto 2 personal encrypted drives, each one cleanly partitioned, time-stamped, and verified. Under the clause Nolan had signed, I was well within bounds. Protected even. Any non-public, non-deployed systems I maintained were considered intellectual property of ClearSpan Systems until consolidated under an amended contract. And no such contract existed, not yet. I mapped every dependency to a manifest, labeled modules by contribution origin, mine, Kieran's, Tasha's, Ron's. Each contributor had already received an invite to ClearSpan's private contributor agreement sent quietly months ago, under the radar. I didn't need them to act. I just needed them to have the option. They hadn't asked questions, not directly, but they were beginning to understand. Kieran had started backing up his test suite with unusual discipline. Tasha asked if we should start logging our commit hashes externally, just in case something gets weird. Ron brought in his own laptop one morning, ran his entire module in sandboxed mode, then wiped it before lunch. Nobody said the word sabotage, nobody said betrayal. But we all knew something had shifted. The room had changed, the rules had changed, we were still building. But now we were building with the quiet awareness that we might need to survive what came next. And if the roof collapsed, We weren't going down with it. The conference room was already humming when I walked in. Half investor relations, half over-caffeinated tech execs trying to look busier than they were. Demo day mornings always feel like a panic attack in slow motion, but this time, the air had a different weight. Anticipation mixed with ego and just the faintest whiff of fear. Nolan was pacing like a game show host on meth, berating some poor intern over the font size on a pre-roll slide. Why does this look like it was made in PowerPoint for toddlers? I said sleek, not Sesame Street. He hadn't noticed the new face at the far end of the table, but I had. Paul Denton, outside counsel, not internal legal, not even general corporate. This guy was Skylance's high-dollar, fire-only-when-panicking legal sniper. He was flipping through a binder of attachments like he'd just been asked to disarm a bomb made of stapled paper and bad decisions. I kept my face still, sat quietly, pretended to check my notes while watching the color drain from his cheeks like someone had pulled the plug behind his eyes. By 8:47 a.m., he stopped flipping. His mouth opened once, closed, then finally he looked up. These fees, these revert terms, who authorized this? Nolan froze mid-gesture. What fees? Paul tapped the page. Clause 4.3c, cross-referenced with Schedule C. It's active, signed, certified. You confirm delivery without consolidation. Nolan blinked like Paul had just spoken Finnish. Paul kept going, voice sharper now. According to this, any termination of contributors tied to this project prior to contract consolidation triggers premium classification, $45,000 per developer per hour, retroactive to project initiation. Silence. I watched as Nolan's brain tried and failed to compute. Then he scoffed. That's ridiculous. No way that clause is enforceable. Paul's brow didn't move. You signed it. Nolan opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again, grasping for air. That's buried in some subsection nobody reads. It's legal spam. Spam you authorized, Paul said. Then he stood. I need to request building security logs, audio files, last Tuesday morning, elevator channel B. I didn't move, just listened to the faint clicking of his shoes echo down the hall. 10 minutes later, he returned with a flash drive, popped it into the HDMI input. The audio came on instantly, grainy but clear. Nolan's voice, unmistakable. Fire her entire team for that car the moment they finish the new engine. No severance, just clean house. Trent's laughter followed like a hyena chorus. Think you'll get enough out of it to cover the Escalade? That or a Cayenne, I'm not picky. The room went dead. Investors stopped scrolling their phones. One of them stood up, whispering to another as he walked out, already dialing someone on his cell. The CFO blinked like he'd been slapped. Is that current? Paul nodded. Timestamp matches. Audio chain of custody confirmed. Trent tried to speak, some half-stammered line about context and sarcasm, but no one was listening. All eyes were on Nolan now, who looked like someone had just hit him with a defibrillator full of shame. HR's director slowly leaned forward, stared at the printout, and said in a voice so thin it barely made air, "How far back does it apply?" Paul replied without looking up. 7 months, per the schedule. That's when I felt it. Not triumph, not pride, just power, contained, steady, ice in the bloodstream, not fire. I didn't say a word, didn't need to. They'd already told the story themselves, and now the invoice was reading itself aloud. The demo room stayed empty. The investors, pressed and prepped in their suits and startups, stood outside the glass doors in a tight, whispering knot, arms folded, jaws clenched, not a single one crossing the threshold. They weren't being dramatic. They were waiting for legal to confirm whether standing in that room, watching our system load up, would make them complicit in a pending financial detonation. And make no mistake, that's exactly what it was. Inside, Nolan was unraveling like wet tissue. He kept flipping through a copy of the contract like a magic trick would suddenly undo the signature with sleight of hand. It was buried. There's no way it's enforceable if it's that buried, right? His voice cracked halfway through the word enforceable. No one answered. Paul just watched him with a lawyer's dead eyes, that cool, unblinking stare that says, "You already did this to yourself. I'm just the narrator." That's when Everett stormed in. Everett Vexley, founder, emeritus chair, the real CEO when things actually mattered. He hadn't set foot in our building in over a year. But when 7 figures of legal exposure start whispering your family name on a board call, you don't just stroll in. You descend. What the hell am I hearing about a $45,000 hourly fee? He barked, coat still on, hair windblown, like he'd gotten the call mid-breakfast and drove 90 through traffic. Someone explain this. Now, Nolan tried first. Mistake. It's just a clause, an obscure clause, one that was accidentally activated through a miscommunication in the Everett cut him off with a single raised hand. Is the clause valid? Paul nodded. Signed, time-stamped. Licensed framework is sound. Fee schedule ties directly to early termination prior to consolidation. Retroactive. Retroactive, how far? Everett growled. Project start. 7 months. 8 engineers. Paul didn't blink. $4.9 million per person. Everett turned to Trent. Trent looked like a frat pledge who realized too late the hazing wasn't a joke. It was just locker room talk, he muttered, backing toward the door. Nobody was actually going to fire them. We were just... Paul plugged in the flash drive again. The room filled with Nolan's voice. Fire her entire team for that car the moment they finish the new engine. Everett exhaled like someone had just broken his rib. Then, without saying another word, he turned and walked out. 10 minutes later, my badge pinged for a private conference room. The whole team was summoned. Tasha looked pale. Ron kept adjusting his glasses like the lenses were lying to him. Kieran asked quietly if he should start backing up personal files. We were ready to get axed. We knew what came next in stories like this. Kill the scapegoats, erase the trail. But that wasn't what happened. When Everett entered the room, he didn't look at us with the blank politeness of HR or the forced authority of C-suite panic. He looked at us like he'd finally seen the engine room of the ship he used to command and realized someone had tried to sink it. You're not being terminated, he said. You're being protected. You're critical personnel until further notice. No one touches your contracts, not finance, not HR, not anyone. Kieran blinked. Tasha whispered, Wait, what? Everett turned to me. I assume you're the architect of this clause? I didn't confirm. I didn't need to. He nodded anyway. There's an emergency board session in 40 minutes. I suggest you stay near your phone. Then he left. We sat there in stunned silence, the weight of what had almost happened beginning to settle across our shoulders. I looked at my team, these exhausted, brilliant people who had carried this company through failures no one even knew existed, and saw something flicker behind their eyes. Not relief, not yet, but belief. Outside the door, I heard Nolan raising his voice again. He blamed HR. HR blamed Nolan. Trent blamed miscommunication. The board blamed all of them. And in that silence between blame and consequence, something shifted. We weren't prey anymore. We were the invoice. The crisis attorney showed up in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car and a stare that could strip paint. He didn't say hello, didn't bother with introductions, just walked into the boardroom with a leather binder, a legal pad, and a look like he already knew how this was going to end. He was just here to document the crash. He spread out the contract documents across the table like forensic evidence, highlighted signatures, print timestamps, version history. No theatrics, just facts. Then he paused, picked up the page Nolan had signed, and held it between 2 fingers like it might catch fire. This clause wasn't hidden, he said. Tone dry. It was footnoted, indexed, cross-referenced. You initialed it. Nolan scoffed. I didn't read that part. It's boilerplate. The attorney blinked, like he'd just been told oxygen was optional. You activated premium consulting fees with this signature. This is catastrophic. He dropped the page on the table like a verdict. Silence. One of the junior board members tried to speak but got waved off. Another started Googling the term retroactive liability exposure under the table. Then the attorney continued, evenly, the safest course of action is to halt all employment terminations immediately. Any move to eliminate engineering staff now would be legally considered a triggering event, on top of the original one. I strongly recommend containment. No further personnel action without legal clearance. Everett didn't argue, just nodded once and tapped out a text. 30 seconds later, the SVP of HR entered the room, looking like she'd just walked through a battlefield. Her tablet screen lit up as she scanned the message. Effective immediately, she said, and all termination workflows are paused. Freeze all active removals. Executive team will convene for structured mitigation. Outside the boardroom, the floor had gone dead quiet. Emails stopped. Calls stalled mid-ring. People weren't working. They were watching, waiting. And then the messages started coming in. Ping. Was that you? Ping. You saved their jobs, didn't you? Ping. We heard legal pulled the plug. That clause. Did you write that? I didn't reply. Not to a single one. But I didn't delete them either. Let the speculation grow. Let it swirl like smoke in a locked room. I hadn't asked for credit. I didn't need it. I needed space. And leverage. At 11:38 a.m., the board's emergency session went live. Nolan entered the call looking gray and drawn, his usual bravado stripped down to silence and a trembling coffee cup. Trent sat beside him in a different room, trying to look important, with a background blur that cut off half his head. The first question wasn't a question. "Why didn't you flag the fee clause?" Nolan stammered something about oversight and legalese. The second? "Did you threaten termination on a recorded line before consolidation?" Trent opened his mouth to deny it. The audio file played again before he could finish. By 11:52 a.m., they were both muted. By 11:56 a.m., they were both suspended. Indefinitely. The call ended with Everett saying just one thing. "Effective immediately, engineering reports to me. No changes without my sign-off." Afterward, I stood by the window in the server room, watching the parking lot below. The Escalade brochure Trent had left behind earlier was crumpled in the trash. Cold wind blew through the half-open maintenance door. Everything felt still, not safe, but still. We were back in play, and for once, we weren't the ones being played. Finance sent out a mass update at 7:12 a.m. the next morning. Subject line: Budget allocations Q1 adjusted. Critical infrastructure support prioritized. No explanation, no apology, just a line item reversal so abrupt it felt like whiplash. Every cut Nolan had pushed through was undone. Headcounts reinstated. Contractor terminations rescinded. Even Ron's deferred certification stipend was quietly reauthorized, flagged urgent. HR followed at 9:03, equally bloodless. All Q1 transition plans are suspended pending board review. Do not initiate any offboarding actions. Retention bonuses to be communicated individually. Tasha read it out loud like it was a foreign language. Wait, did we just get unfired and given a bonus in the same email? Kieran leaned back, stunned. Feels like we're in the eye of a hurricane. Not the eye, the start of the rebuild. The internal chatter had shifted overnight. Where there had been silence and tension, there was now cautious movement, questions, tentative praise, curiosity cloaked in reverence. Legal and Risk wanted to know who had authored the clause. No one told them, not outright. But Paul Denton had seen the revision history. So had Everett. I didn't make a scene, no victory laps, just kept working. At 11:27 a.m., I sent Everett a link to the Arcadia build under my LLC. Read-only access, full documentation, version history included. I didn't pitch it, didn't sell it, just the facts, laid out like a blueprint for a house that hadn't collapsed during the quake. He messaged back half an hour later, reading now. 2 hours after that, I was called into the executive room. Just me and Everett. He held the printout like it was made of glass, pages worn at the corners already. He'd clearly gone through it twice. This is modular, elegant, no vendor lock, no fragile cron dependencies, and the test logs... He paused, looked up. This runs circles around what we've got in production. I said nothing. Everett leaned forward. We're replacing the old engine with this. No committee vote, no roadmap posturing, just a decision delivered quietly, the way only someone who used to be CEO could deliver it. And just like that, Arcadia went from secret project to salvation. Outside the room, Nolan's office was already being cleared. 2 security guards, 1 compliance officer, a box of personal items, and that ridiculous innovate or die poster he used to point at like it was scripture. Trent hadn't been seen since the board vote. Rumor was he'd been reassigned to a non-operational advisory role, which meant his badge still worked, but only in the parking lot. I should have felt more triumphant. But what I felt was quieter, heavier, like finally setting down a weight I'd forgotten I was carrying. That night, Everett messaged again. I'll need you to formally reintegrate Arcadia into the platform, under new naming. I replied with a single request. Full autonomy for my team. We pick our people, we set the architecture, no more interference, no more executive playbook band-aids, we build it right, or not at all. He answered with 2 words. Granted, unconditionally. That was the moment it shifted. Not just the power, not just the engine, the trust. For the first time in 11 years, we weren't a liability waiting to be reduced. We were the future they had to earn. The conference table was smaller this time. No interns racing around with HDMI cables. No Nolan peacocking in a fitted blazer pretending to understand our infrastructure. No Trent, thank God. Just 7 people, all quietly aware that we were sitting atop a new center of gravity. Everett opened the call with 3 words. We're ready now. The investor on the other end didn't even ask about the old system. They'd seen the numbers from the Arcadia testbed. Uptime, load balancing, predictive failover. They knew. Halfway through the presentation, I watched their lead architect nod slowly, then say something that felt like closure threaded through praise. This doesn't look like a rebuild. This looks like someone fixed what was broken before it even failed. The term sheet was adjusted. Not just financially, structurally. My team's work wasn't a feature anymore. It was the platform. The deal didn't just go through, it locked us in as the future core of Skylance's enterprise pipeline. 2 weeks later, the org chart was updated. For the first time in company history, engineering infrastructure wasn't buried 3 tiers below product or finance. We had our own branch, our own budget, titles adjusted, salaries corrected. People who'd been background noise were now baseline critical. Tasha got her promotion. Ron's mentorship program was funded. Kieran's architecture stream was formalized as a training pipeline. Nolan's name was gone. Not footnoted, not reassigned, just erased. Nobody asked where Trent went. No one needed to. I'd taken to working remotely a few days a week, mostly from the cafe across the street. Quiet place, good espresso, no venture bros pitching apps about dog yoga in my ear. I liked being close enough to walk in when needed, but far enough that I didn't have to breathe recycled office air soaked in boardroom panic. This morning, I was finalizing onboarding guidelines for our new hires. Clear documentation, security practices, ownership attribution policies. The kind of stuff Nolan once called a waste of engineering cycles. My laptop pinged. Notification. Skylance HR. Final termination confirmation. Nolan Vexley. Severance package revoked due to contractual breach. I sipped my coffee. The crema was perfect. A second notification followed. Leadership change log, Trent Vexley. Removed from succession pathway. No further executive consideration. I didn't smile. Didn't gloat. Just closed the pop-ups and kept typing. Somewhere across the street, the lights on the top floor flicked on. New occupants in Nolan's old office, probably someone trying to figure out what power really is. It isn't volume, it isn't title. It's writing the clause before they even see the contract. They wanted to fire us the moment we delivered. Instead, they delivered themselves the invoice.